You wear $50 sneakers and think you understand how fashion works. You pick up a piece of clothing, check the label, calculate the price. Just fabric, you tell yourself, just leather, just a name. You're wrong. One man proved it 100 years ago, so convincingly that millions of people today still hand over thousands of dollars for a bag without knowing why. His name was Guccio Gucci. Today you'll discover 6 things about him. Things that will permanently change how you see money, status, and business. Number 4 is the most uncomfortable, because it destroys something you've probably believed your entire life. And at the end, one specific principle Guccio used starting from nothing. A principle that worked then, and works right now, in any business, in any industry. Stay with this. Don't skip ahead. It matters more than it appears. March 26, 1881. Florence, Italy. His father was a leather craftsman, not wealthy, no connections. No name that meant anything in a world where names were everything. The family lived in a small apartment in a working-class neighborhood of Florence. Outside, one of the most beautiful cities on earth. The Duomo, Michelangelo's David, the Ponte Vecchio. Beauty everywhere. But beauty and money are not the same thing. And in the Gucci household, there was plenty of the first and almost none of the second. Guccio Giovanni Battista Giacinto Dario Maria Gucci. Yes, that was his full name. A mouthful even by Italian standards. He grew up watching his father sell leather bags and accessories to wealthy British and European tourists who flooded Florence every summer. But here's what you need to understand. He wasn't just watching people buy things. He was watching how they moved, how they carried their luggage, what kind of confidence radiated off them simply because of what they owned. He was watching how an object could say everything about a person without a single word spoken. A 17-year-old boy was absorbing all of this, filing it away, not yet knowing why. Then the family business collapsed. His father went bankrupt. Suddenly, without a safety net. Guccio was 17 years old. Think about this from the perspective of an ordinary person. 17 years old, father out of work, family with no money, no connections, no education, no plan. Most people in that situation find the nearest available job and stay there forever. Guccio left the country. In 1898, he traveled first to Paris, the world capital of fashion, and then to London. Not because he had a plan, but because instinct told him where wealth concentrates, opportunity concentrates. In London, he became a dishwasher at the Savoy Hotel. Wait, before you move past that detail, stop. The Savoy in 1899 was not just a hotel. It was where the most powerful, most wealthy, most glamorous people on the planet came to stay. American industrialists, British aristocrats, European royalty, opera singers, theatre legends. They all passed through the Savoy's gilded doors, and Guccio Gucci was scrubbing pots in the kitchen below, surrounded by all of it. But he didn't stay in the kitchen. That's the thing about Guccio you need to understand from the very beginning. He had a ferocious hunger to learn, to absorb, to climb. He worked his way up from dishwasher to waiter, then to bellhop, then to elevator attendant, then to a role where he dealt directly with guests. Every single day he studied their luggage, the leather bags they carried, the way they held those objects, not like mere possessions, but like extensions of their identity. J. Cave and Sons, the premier London luggage maker of that era. He memorized their craftsmanship down to the last stitch. He had grown up watching his father work with leather. He had fled to London and found himself at the precise intersection of craft and class. Every conversation with a Savoy guest was a lesson. Every bag loaded into an elevator was a masterclass in what luxury actually meant to people who could afford it. And here is what's remarkable, if you remember where he started. Because Guccio Gucci was not just observing wealth from a distance, he was memorizing it. But the most important part is still ahead, because what he took away from the Savoy wasn't just knowledge about leather goods. He understood something that marketing departments spend millions trying to replicate. He understood luxury is not a product, it's a narrative. It's the story a person tells themselves about who they are when they hold the right thing in their hands. A wealthy British aristocrat at the Savoy wasn't buying a leather suitcase. He was buying the feeling of belonging to a world defined by taste, quality, and history. Guccio understood this at 18 years old, standing in a lift, watching a grown man handle a piece of luggage the way others handle family heirlooms. He returned to Italy, married Aida Calvelli in 1901, found work at Franci, one of Italy's most respected luggage manufacturers, finally began working with the materials he had studied for years. From the inside, how fine leather is selected, how a stitch affects a bag's longevity, how a handle is made to last. He was no longer just an observer, he was becoming a craftsman. Then came the First World War, conscription, the front. He survived, returned, and in 1921, at 40 years old, he opened the first Gucci shop on Via della Vigna Nuova in Florence. Small, modest. No sign announcing, this is a future empire, and now, the uncomfortable truth. I promised it in the last section. Here it is. Gucci did something that most business books prefer not to discuss, because it shatters the beautiful myth of the honest path to the top. To attract the right clients, wealthy, demanding, susceptible to heritage, he began telling stories about his family, stories that were not true. He hinted at ancient ties between the Gucci family and Florentine nobility, spoke of ancestors who crafted saddles for Italian royalty, mentioned a connection to the Medici, the legendary merchant dynasty that funded Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and Botticelli. Later research proved all of it was mythology. His father had been a modest, ultimately unsuccessful merchant. His daughter would confirm years later that the family had never been saddle makers. But here is the uncomfortable truth about luxury and human nature. It worked. Don't rush to judge. I know what you're thinking right now. He simply lied. That's deception. Success built on lies isn't real success. Here's why it isn't that simple. The product was genuine. Absolutely. The leather was exceptional. The stitching was immaculate. The designs were inspired by the finest things he had observed at the Savoy over years of watching. Guccio wasn't selling a poor product with a great story. He was selling an outstanding product with a story that helped the buyer feel what he already wanted to feel. A wealthy tourist walking into a small Florentine shop wanted to believe he was buying something with history, with roots, with soul. Guccio gave him that story, then made sure the product itself justified any legend. This is the first principle that made Gucci possible. Narrative creates desire. Quality creates loyalty. You need both. Neither works long enough on its own. A beautiful story without quality is fraud that gets exposed sooner or later. Outstanding quality without a story is simply a good product that nobody remembers. Guccio combined them, and this isn't an Italian secret, not a trick for luxury bag sellers. It's a principle that works in any business, any country, any era. Florence, 1938. The shop on Via della Vigna Nuova had been running for 17 years. Guccio's eldest son, Aldo, had joined the business. Things were going well enough to open a second location. Rome. Address, Via Condotti, 21. One of the most prestigious shopping streets in Italy. Guccio was 57. His small leather shop had become something real. He had defied every circumstance of his birth to build a brand that was beginning to matter. And then, once again, the world intervened. September 1939. Europe went to war. The Second World War didn't just pause the luxury goods market, it obliterated it. Nobody was buying designer handbags while cities burned and food was rationed. League of Nations embargoes had already strangled leather supplies across Italy. By the time the conflict was in full swing, leather was essentially unavailable to fashion houses. Gucci, like every other luxury brand in Europe, faced an existential question. Adapt or die. Guccio chose to adapt. During the war years, Gucci's artisans pivoted to making boots for the Italian infantry. They sewed canvas bags. They experimented with materials nobody in luxury had ever seriously considered. And this improvisation, born entirely from necessity, accidentally created some of the most iconic design signatures in fashion history. The canvas bags Gucci produced during wartime shortages featured a pattern that would become one of the most recognizable symbols in the world. A dark brown background with red and green bands. You know it today as GG canvas. It was born from wartime necessity, not aesthetic philosophy. But something even more significant was coming. The war ended in 1945. Italy lay in ruins. Europe was rebuilding from rubble. Leather was still scarce, and Gucci, now in his 60s, was staring at a business that had survived the war but still couldn't access the materials it needed to grow. If not leather, then what? Something durable, something beautiful, something no other luxury house had thought of. In 1947, Gucci found his answer. Bamboo, stop here. Because this decision sounds straightforward now. But in 1947, it was outright radical. This was a luxury leather goods house. Leather was literally its identity, its foundation, its entire reason for existing. And here was Gucci, approaching 70, proposing to make bag handles from Japanese bamboo cane shipped from across the world. Imagine the reaction. You sell expensive bags to wealthy people, and you want to make the handle from bamboo, from something that grows in Japanese gardens. But Gucci understood what others didn't. A limitation is not a problem. It's a clue. The process of creating a bamboo handle was almost ritualistic. The bamboo cane was heated over an open flame, bent by hand into a curved shape, coated in multiple layers of lacquer, toasted to a rich caramel brown finish, cooled to hold its form permanently. Every handle was shaped by human hands, which meant no two handles were ever alike. Every single bag was genuinely, irreducibly unique. The product received number 0633. No grand name, no marketing campaign, just a catalogue number. But what happened next cannot be planned. Ingrid Bergman began wearing it publicly. Elizabeth Taylor appeared with it in photographs. The bamboo handle started appearing in films, in magazines. On the arms of women, the entire world watched. In 1958, Gucci patented the bamboo handle because other fashion houses were already trying to copy it. Princess Diana was photographed with it in 1997. Beyoncé, Carla Bruni, Naomi Watts. The list stretched across generations. And it all started because a leather shortage forced an old man with a leather shop to think differently. I know what you're thinking now. Fine, he just got lucky. The right people picked up the right bag at the right moment. That's luck, not strategy. Here's why that's wrong. Luck is when an opportunity arrives to someone who isn't ready. They grab it by accident, don't know what to do with it, and lose it. Gucci spent 20 years studying exactly what wealthy people want to feel when they hold an object. He knew that uniqueness wasn't just a word. It was a physical sensation, holding something that was unlike any other object in the world. The bamboo handle delivered that sensation literally. 13 hours of hand labor per handle. No two alike. Ever. That's not luck. That's 20 years of observation made real in a single product. The war gave Gucci something else beyond bamboo. The GG canvas, the pattern with red and green stripes on a dark background, became so recognizable by the late 40s that Gucci began using it deliberately, turned wartime necessity into a signature language. Today, that monogram is one of the most imitated symbols in the world. Think about that. The most recognizable element of one of the planet's most expensive brands was born because its creator had no choice. This is the second principle worth remembering. A limitation accepted with intelligence becomes an advantage. Not the limitation you ignore, not the one that paralyzes you, but the one you pick up and ask, fine, no leather. What do I have? No money. What skill do I have? No connections. What do I see that others don't? That was the thinking of a man who opened his first shop from nothing at 40 and at nearly 70 created a design that outlived him by 70 years. January 2nd, 1953. Gucci died in Florence. He was 71 years old. He had built a company with his own hands, outlasted 2 world wars, created an iconic design language from the materials of crisis, established a brand that was only beginning to understand its own potential. The New York store had opened months before his death. His son Aldo had opened it at the Savoy Plaza Hotel. Notice the poetry of that location. The Savoy. It was at the Savoy in London that a teenage Gucci had first understood what luxury meant. Decades later, his son opened a Gucci boutique in a Savoy hotel in New York. The full circle of it is almost cinematic. But Gucci would never walk through those doors himself. He died knowing he had started something. He did not live to see what it would become. The company passed to his sons, Aldo, Vasco, and Rodolfo. Aldo became the driving force behind global expansion. His energy, his salesmanship, his almost manic belief in the Gucci name pushed the brand into territories Guccio himself had only dreamed of. And the world was ready. The 1950s and 60s were the golden age of the House of Gucci. The brand began attracting celebrities in a way no marketing budget could manufacture. These were organic endorsements driven by genuine desire. Audrey Hepburn was rarely seen without a Gucci accessory. Grace Kelly became a devoted client. In 1966, Rodolfo Gucci and designer Vittorio Accornero created the Flora scarf specifically for Princess Grace of Monaco, a floral pattern that would inspire an entire design lineage for the house. But the moment that changed everything came in 1961. Jacqueline Kennedy, wife of the newly inaugurated President of the United States, the most photographed woman in America. She was photographed carrying a Gucci bag. The bag had been introduced in the 50s under the name The Constance, a soft, unstructured silhouette with a distinctive closure. Some historians consider it the first ever hobo bag. What it definitely became after that photograph was a cultural phenomenon. Jackie carried it everywhere. She was photographed with it repeatedly. She collected different versions and colorways. In her honor, the brand renamed the bag. It's called the Jackie bag. That name has never changed. President Kennedy himself called Aldo Gucci the first Italian ambassador to the United States. That quote tells you everything about the cultural moment Gucci had reached. By 1969, Gucci managed 10 shops in the United States alone. 84,000 Gucci moccasins were sold in America that single year. The brand opened stores in London, Palm Beach, Tokyo, Hong Kong. Launched its first watches in 1972. Partnered with Rolls-Royce for a luggage set. Created a special Gucci edition of the AMC Hornet, one of the first fashion houses to collaborate with an American car manufacturer. The double G logo, introduced in 1964 as a tribute to the brand's founder, was now one of the most recognizable symbols on Earth. This was what Guccio built. This started with a poor boy washing dishes at the Savoy. But success at this scale generates its own problems. The problems coming for the House of Gucci would be the most dramatic, most damaging, and most human any fashion dynasty has ever faced. The 1970s and 80s were, in theory, a continuation of Gucci's golden run. Revenue was enormous. The brand was globally recognized. But beneath the surface, something was fracturing. Because when a family business grows into a global empire, the fault lines of family crack open in spectacular ways. The Gucci family was entering a period of warfare that the fashion world watched with equal parts horror and fascination. The conflict centered on control. Who had it? Who deserved it? And who was taking it from whom? Aldo Gucci, elderly but still ferocious, clashed with his nephew Maurizio, the grandson of Guccio, who had inherited a controlling stake in the company after his father Rodolfo's death in 1983. Maurizio wanted change, modernization, power. Aldo resisted. The battle turned vicious. In a move of breathtaking spite, Aldo accused Maurizio of forging his father's signature on a document to avoid inheritance taxes. That accusation sent Maurizio fleeing to Switzerland to escape prosecution. In 1986, the man who had built Gucci's American empire, the man US presidents had praised, was convicted of tax evasion and sentenced to prison. He served time in a federal correctional facility. The contrast with the brand's image of elegance and sophistication was almost impossible to process. But this was just the beginning of the nightmare. Maurizio returned from Switzerland, cleared his legal troubles, and made his move. By 1989, he had seized control of the company and been made chairman of the Gucci Group. He embarked on an ambitious, extravagant expansion of the company's headquarters. Spent money the brand arguably didn't have. From 1991 to 1993, Gucci's finances went into the red. The brand that had dressed royalty and first ladies was hemorrhaging cash while its chairman overreached. Then, in 1993, Maurizio Gucci did something that permanently ended the Gucci family's connection to the company. He sold his remaining stake, the last family shares in the House of Gucci, to the investment group Investcorp for $170 million. It was over. The name Guccio had put on every stitch and seam no longer belonged to his family. But that wasn't the end of the story, not even close. On March 27, 1995, Maurizio Gucci walked into the lobby of his Milan office building. A man hired by his former wife, Patrizia Reggiani, was waiting for him. Maurizio Gucci was shot and killed. The story of the House of Gucci had taken turns that no one, not Guccio washing dishes in London, not Aldo building the New York store, could have predicted. The family story ended in murder, in betrayal, in courtrooms and prisons, and tabloid headlines designed to destroy the myth Guccio had so carefully constructed. And yet, the brand survived. By the mid-90s, the House of Gucci was in genuine crisis. The family was gone, the finances had been battered, the brand had been diluted by years of overextension. At one point, Gucci was selling over 22,000 different products through more than 1,000 stores worldwide. The exclusivity and mystique Guccio had built were eroding under the weight of being everywhere. Gucci had become something anyone could buy, which meant it was becoming something nobody particularly wanted. Enter Tom Ford. In 1994, American designer Tom Ford was appointed creative director of Gucci. Relatively unknown at the time, the brand was struggling. Nobody was quite sure this would work. But first, before Ford, came Dawn Mello, brought in as executive vice president to perform triage. She reduced the number of stores from over 1,000 to 180, slashed the product range from 22,000 items to 7,000, moved headquarters back to Florence, where the soul of the brand had always lived. Ford took that foundation and built something extraordinary on top of it. He stripped Gucci back to its essence, made it sexy, made it dangerous, made it the brand people talked about in a way they hadn't in years. His collections were bold, sensual, deliberately provocative. The double G logo came roaring back, the horsebit loafer, the bamboo bag, the Jackie, all reconsidered and relaunched with a contemporary edge that felt urgent. The fashion industry's reaction was shock, a brand that had nearly been written off, associated with tax scandals, family court battles, and a murdered chairman. And suddenly, the most talked-about fashion house on earth. That is not a minor achievement. That is a resurrection of the rarest kind, built ultimately on the bones that Guccio had laid down. The quality, the craftsmanship, the Florence identity, the equestrian heritage threaded through everything from the horsebit to the Flora scarf. By 1999, when Gucci became part of the French luxury conglomerate PPR, later renamed Kering, the brand had been completely transformed, not merely surviving, dominating again. Tom Ford departed in 2005, but the renovation he had performed lasted for decades. Then came Alessandro Michele. Appointed creative director in 2015, he took Gucci in an entirely different direction. Maximalist, deeply literary, wildly eclectic, and fiercely beloved by a generation raised on the internet, hungry for fashion that meant something beyond status. Harry Styles wore Gucci suits on stages around the world and looked like he had been born in them. The brand collaborated with Adidas, with Balenciaga, with Disney, with the North Face. The word Gucci itself entered everyday American slang as a synonym for excellent, correct, desirable. By the 2010s, the name had fully entered the cultural bloodstream, which is perhaps the most extraordinary thing a brand name can ever achieve. In 2024, the House of Gucci operated 529 stores across the globe, employed over 20,000 people, generated €7.5 billion in annual revenue. The name Guccio gave to a small leather shop on Via della Vigna Nuova in Florence is now one of the most valuable brand names in the world. All of this started with a boy washing dishes at the Savoy. Let's return to Gucci for a moment, because in a story this large and dramatic, it's easy to lose sight of who he actually was. He was not a genius in the conventional sense. No formal design training, no business education, no wealthy mentor who handed him his opportunity. What he had was a pair of eyes that never stopped observing, and a stubborn refusal to accept that his origin story was also his destiny. He watched wealthy people for years before he understood what they were actually buying. They weren't buying bags, they weren't buying leather. They were buying the feeling that came with those things, the sense of belonging to a world defined by taste and quality and history. He understood this from inside a hotel elevator, watching a British aristocrat handle a piece of luggage the way others handled jewelry. He went home and tried to give people that feeling. He overcame a bankrupt family, survived 2 world wars, turned wartime leather shortages into the bamboo handle that became one of the most distinctive design signatures in fashion. Every time the world tried to close a door on him, he found another door and walked through it. There is a philosophy embedded in everything Guccio built that deserves to be named directly. He believed, and his entire life is the evidence, that craft and aspiration are not opposites. Something made with genuine skill and genuine care can carry meaning that transcends its material. A bag is not just a bag. When human hands shape something with patience and intention, the result is an object people will treasure, protect, and eventually pass down to their children. Was his family history real? No, but his commitment to the craft was absolutely real. The seams held, the leather was fine, the bamboo handles bent by hand over open flames in a workshop
From
outside
Tokyo
Florence
to London,
were unique
the
in
golden
the world
era is
because
here.
no machine had
We
made
are
them the
expanding
same.
across the
And that
globe.
authenticity, that irreducible humaneness, is what people were buying when they bought Gucci, even if they could not have articulated it. When Alessandro Michele was once asked to describe what bamboo meant to Gucci, he said that bamboo is one of nature's marvels, a material with extraordinary physical and aesthetic qualities. He was talking about a design choice, but he might as well have been talking about Gucci himself, a man of extraordinary resilience, shaped by extraordinary pressure into something that endured. Today, the House of Gucci stands as one of the most valuable luxury brands in the world. Its logo is recognized in every country on Earth. Its history has been turned into films, books, and documentaries. The drama of the family, the feuds, the prison sentences, the murder, has been dissected and dramatized and turned into entertainment, which is perhaps the ultimate sign that a brand has become myth. But Gucci's legacy is not just the drama. It is the design. It is the Jackie bag, reinterpreted by every creative director who followed and still relevant over 60 years after Jackie Kennedy first made it famous. It is the bamboo handle, still handcrafted today in workshops outside Florence, still requiring 13 hours of labor per piece, still meaning that no 2 bags are alike. It is the GG monogram, born from wartime canvas shortages, now one of the most imitated symbols in the world. It is the horsebit loafer, the only footwear on permanent display at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Introduced in 1953, the year Guccio died, as a nod to the equestrian world that had always defined his aesthetic. This is legacy. It is proof that origin does not determine outcome. Because Gucci did not come from wealth, did not come from fashion. He came from a leather craftsman's home in Florence and fled that home with nothing when the family business collapsed. He went to work in a foreign kitchen because that was the only option available. In that foreign kitchen, he began to watch, to learn, and to understand something about human desire that most people who sell luxury goods spend entire careers trying to figure out. He proved that limitation is never the final word, that poverty is a condition, not a verdict, that the son of a bankrupt merchant can dress a sitting first lady, a princess, a queen. That craft pursued with obsession, intelligence, and patience becomes something the world recognizes as irreplaceable. The family that bore his name eventually lost control of it. The empire he built was fought over, mismanaged, nearly destroyed, and then resurrected by people who were not related to him at all.
You will not
That is the painful and very human reality of what Guccio left behind. He did not live to see the Jackie Kennedy photograph. He did not live to see Tom Ford or Alessandro Michele or the €7 billion revenue figure. He died in Florence in 1953, having built something that still had no idea how large it was going to become. But the thing he built was real. The thing he built was excellent. The thing he built was held together by the same values he absorbed, watching wealthy guests at the Savoy move through the world with a confidence he had decided, as a teenager scrubbing pots, to one day understand and replicate. He got there. A poor Italian boy who started as a dishwasher created one of the greatest luxury brands the world has ever known. Not because he was born to it, not because it was easy, but because he watched and he learned and he refused to let where he came from be the reason he could not go somewhere extraordinary. Write in the comments a number from 1 to 5. Which moment in Guccio's story hit you the hardest? 1. The boy who left Italy at 17 with empty pockets. 2. 20 years of observation at the Savoy instead of just washing dishes. 3. The bamboo handle born from a wartime crisis. 4. The family that lost the empire they built. 5. The brand that rose again after murder, scandal, and collapse, and came back stronger. Forward this video to one person you know right now, someone who believes their background, their city, their starting conditions are a life sentence. This single story might change how they see their own limitations. And it costs nothing. Next week, a story most people don't know. A man who in 1984 received a rejection from every major investor in Silicon Valley. 12 meetings, 12 no's, and an internal document from one of those companies dated that same year proves they knew he was right. And turned him down anyway. His name was Steve Jobs, and what he did after that changed not just technology, it changed how humanity understands the very word product. Don't miss it.